Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan, what is hyperconscious?
Once you understand why something is the way that it is, now you have the power to change it. Great conversations with great people and great questions are the keys to the kingdom of unlocking your consciousness.
Every single action that you do starts as a thought. When you control the way you think, you will control the way you act, and you will control the way you live. That is hyperconscious. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan and I were lucky enough to sit down with Mr. Eddie Pinero of Your World Within in person in Florida at his house.
Hollywood, Florida. It was amazing. 2 years ago, this was just a dream. We podcasted with him on episode number 37. We traveled to Florida, and we drove 10 plus hours to see this man. He has a super successful YouTube channel with 25 million plus views. And then he dropped all kinds of wisdom on us about how he did that, some of the struggles to get there, triumphs and tribulations, next level.
Eddie is a runner, and he's going through a bit of an injury, so we talked about how you need to find another outlet when you lose one of your big ones. We talked about personal development in a nutshell. We talked about his success and how he stays motivated, and honestly, it was one of my favorite episodes to date.
It was so good. It's not the strongest, fastest, or smartest who survives. As Charles Darwin would say, it's the most adaptable. Eddie is adapting and growing, and so are we, and so are you, because you're listening to this podcast.
And we hope you guys enjoy this episode.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. No. Geographically? Geographically. This is cool. So I would say make sure that pretty face is shown.
Yes, true.
They're going to want to see that thing. They're going to want to see that thing, Alan. That face. You good?
Ready?
Anyone can sail on smooth waters. Anyone can dance when the music is playing.
So is it just to run in the rain? You tell me.
Remind yourself of what that door opening is going to feel like. So I have dreams. Compulsions to be legendary, evolving from the imaginary, and it's near and it's real. I can see. In due time, we realize that real life is defined by our own eyes. And I have blueprints to the skyline. It's just reality is built methodically. And overnight success you would never guess takes a long time. You have to cut lifelines and navigate landmines. But it's your move on your cue. Just decide. So I sat there, thought about it. How long am I going to go on about it? Put my shoes on. I said so long and went outside. Right through the field I used to run by, where the rows of sunflowers waist high, but it was different than what I envisioned. There weren't any road signs or guidelines or letters that said it's all just fine. It was just me adjusting as I made my way to the sunrise. Then I paused. On the ground below me was a little door. I knocked slowly, was pretty scared, maybe ill-prepared, but we get one life only. So I opened the hatch, looked down, and it's pitch black, no sound. And if you don't choose any road will do. I've been riding logistical merry-go-rounds and my eyes are wide. Restless soul with scores to settle from years ago. I know that there's more cause I told me so. I'm going down the rabbit hole and there's not a way out. The chips fall, I'm all in. Now my prospects are in lockstep, and each step is a shakedown. I got a coat of armor, sword of steel, call to arms cause the threat's real. And see, crowns are made on battlefields, so your majesty, no, I will never kneel. Time to face fear right front center, watch dials fall like it's November. Got a treasure map on my backpack, it says life's golden. What a pleasure. Been round and round and free falling now, cause there's ghost schools and there's goblins out there. You're leaving us, they call me treasonous. Think that you're dangerous, you must be delirious. Just in the guns fire and the trumpets start and the ground trembles from the steady march. And it looks bad cause their deck's stacked, but my king beats a queen of hearts. They're trying to win in spades, so I set fires with the kind of flames that forge empires. And like a hurricane, but I'm a tad insane. Cat 5, Cheshire. Right around we go, the next episode under the second story, so look out below. Collect the haters' tears, it makes a steady flow. And the greatest fear is I told you so. I know it though, there's no impossible. You can watch it past, you can watch it grow. Be more powerful than you will ever know. I'm going down the rabbit hole.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. If you've been listening for a while, you would have heard Mr. Eddie Pinero on episode number 37. Shortly thereafter, Alan and I set an intention to come down to Florida, where we are right now, at Eddie's pad, to podcast with him in person. Eddie, here we are, and we appreciate the hell out of having you on.
Happy to have you guys. This is awesome.
How are you doing today?
I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah, I can't beat it.
Alan, thoughts become things.
Thoughts become things. Yeah, we podcasted with Eddie on episode 37. We came down to Florida to meet with one of my mentors, Terrence McMahon, and then we were like, Eddie, we're going to be in Florida, man. Where are you at? And we drove 5 hours this morning to be here. We woke up at 4:30.
From Jacksonville.
From Jacksonville, Florida, across the state. Very flat state.
Yeah, extremely flat. I also was kind of surprised with the driving here. Coming from Massachusetts to here, I expected it to be similar, but everybody's kind of like chill here. A couple of people cut me off and almost killed us, but Alan was sleeping, so it wasn't a big deal. But I was actually pretty impressed by that.
Everyone's on vacation.
Yeah, right. We were talking in the preamble, and Eddie said that here, even people who live here feel like they're on vacation.
Right. It's different than Boston, for sure.
It definitely is.
Sure.
So
go ahead.
So we were talking on the patio, on the terrace. What would you call that? A terrace?
Yeah, patio terrace.
Terrace sounds better.
Oh,
Terrace.
balcony. That's my
balcony.
Balcony. Yeah.
So we did a little preamble with coffee on the balcony outside, overlooking the ocean, which is beautiful. You'll see the pictures. We're going to do some social media afterwards, and we were talking about why power. And we did an episode recently on how your reason determines your journey. Right? We did a solo rep on that. If Eddie Pinero, you didn't want your world within to be a super, super next level motivational YouTube channel, motivational Instagram page, you wouldn't be where you are today.
Correct.
If we didn't want the Hyperconscious Podcast to be changing millions of people's lives, what are the chances we would have driven, first of all, what are the chances we would have flown down here? And what are the chances we would have woken up at 4 o'clock and driven 5 hours down here? Loving the whole time. Like there was not a second where either one of us complained. And what are the chances that would happen? Zero. Right? Zero. So my question to you is, we talked a little bit outside, but when you first started your page, when you first had this vision, did you have a grand vision of, I want it to be that YouTube page that people go to when they want motivation? Or did it start off as like, all right, I'm going to dip my toes into this, I'm going to see how it goes, and how did it start? Like, was it a huge vision?
I think it was more like, I know I have something to say and I want to say it. And it's sort of I made a conscious decision to kind of go down that road because I knew there was creativity that I want to explore. And then the impact that it had was just like an incredible dynamic. You could say it's addicting, right? It's like doing what you love and being able to help other people. I mean, that's life, right? And so I wanted to take that and progress that, and that's still my motivation. Every day to impact more lives doing what I like to do. I mean, you really can't beat that. So,
Fuck yeah.
So earlier today, we were out on the balcony, and I gave a speech on this at WPI. And we were talking earlier today about how a lot of people say it's not the destination, it's the journey. And while I agree with that, I think that what's most fascinating is the destination that you choose is going to dictate the journey. It's going to dictate who you meet and don't meet, what fears you face and don't face, where you travel and don't travel, like us being in Florida. If we didn't choose a destination of having this incredible podcast and these big dreams, we wouldn't be here right now, meeting incredible people like you. So in your experience, what are some examples of things that you've done that you just wouldn't have done if you didn't have this big dream of this YouTube channel?
Great question.
I think part of it's like exploring the creative pieces that just never would have been discovered. I mean, it really is a process, whether it's writing or music or anything. You don't just sort of jump into this zone. It's a progress. It takes a long time. So to be able to do that, you have to say, I want to find this level of mastery and sort of make your way through that. And then you could say the same thing about the people you meet doing that. Like yourself. I mean, you meet incredible folks that you just wouldn't. If you didn't throw yourself out there, if you didn't sort of explore a little bit, that doesn't happen. And I kind of think about it like, the way I break it down is that mountain metaphor where at the top, that's where you want to be. But to your point, you're not thinking about the top. You're thinking about every little step, and those are the pieces that really create you.
Yeah.
Because, what we have is time. That's the gift that we have. We're here, and it's incredible, and we want to utilize that. You can't hate your life until you get to the top of the mountain. There's no point.
Yeah.
And so those little pieces building up are everything, and it's almost like if you're growing, you're enjoying yourself, you're learning, you're adding value on the way up, that's it.
Love it.
Is it at a completely different? We were talking about like 9 to 5s, and again, if you work a 9 to 5 and you like it, do it. I have nothing against it.
Right.
I just didn't have a great experience with it. But we were talking about it earlier, and it's almost like the second you stop working for somebody else, everything starts to make sense. Like, when you're doing something right, and you can feel like I've told you, I feel guided.
Yeah.
And I don't mean spiritually necessarily. I just mean when I'm doing something, you're shaking your head, so I think you know what I'm talking about.
100%.
when I do something, I'm like, yep, that's exactly what I should have done.
Yep.
Buying those cameras, cool. It's money I don't have, doesn't matter. It's exactly what I should have done. Coming here, going to Arizona to Brendan Burchard's event. Those are all things that sometimes you just got to put yourself out on a limb and say like, wow, this is a lot. This is risky, but you have to do it. And it will pay off. Maybe not immediately. Most likely not immediately. But do you have any examples of times where you did the Down the Rabbit Hole video, which I have promoted heavily because I always listen to it when I'm walking into the gym.
Appreciate that,
yeah,
bro.
man, I love it. I love it so much. And it's a different style for you. It's more of a rap or a spoken poetry as opposed to just kind of like a voiceover with images.
Right.
What made you want to open yourself up to that? And what was it like afterwards when you were like, wow, this is super different. I don't know how this is going to land.
Yeah. There's always that fear. Like when you're doing something new, and you have an audience and you're sort of, you've been putting out a certain style for a while to express yourself a certain way. There's always that criticism. But it's almost like you have to choose not to look at life through that lens of scarcity. And it's like the opportunity. Sure. Even half your audience could be like, dude, nah. But what if 50% love it? Like, what if it opens up a new direction for you?
Yeah.
What if you meet people and, you start venturing off into projects that you love that you never would have if you didn't take that risk? So the worst thing that could happen is people say, it's not a thing. And then you decide where to go from there. I mean, if you love it, maybe you pivot, maybe you do whatever. But you got to think in terms of like the potential. So to your point, when you're talking about taking risks, the difference between an office job and working for yourself is, I feel like the risk versus the reward is so much more visible.
Yeah.
You're really putting yourself in these vulnerable situations, but you get to see these results that simply wouldn't be there if you hadn't done it. Whereas when you're working for someone else, it's just different. There's a different feel to it. There's not as much weight on your shoulders because the freedom you have to make the decisions is totally different, night and day.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. So we talked a little bit also on the balcony about self-discipline and how, we go to school, the bell rings, you got to be in class. The bell rings, you leave class. Then you go to college, you got to go to class. There's all these kind of rules that we grew up with as kids, so we're sort of conditioned to sort of, on some level, do what we're told, show up when we're supposed to show up. And when you jump into this entrepreneurial journey, and we mentioned this on the balcony, you're like, well, I could do nothing for the next 2 weeks and be just fine, but I don't want to do that because I'd make no progress. Right. I always say that it doesn't take self-discipline or as much self-discipline to go to work when you're doing it because you're afraid to get fired versus like waking up in the morning knowing you could do nothing and be fine, but still choosing to work hard anyway. How do you deal with that, man?
Well, it's just wanting to do it. I mean, I think I probably won't put it as delicately as you did. I mean, you said it really nicely out there. It's like people that are rich don't stop when they're rich, because it's not about the money. It's doing what they love to do, which is what made them rich.
Yeah.
And it's like the same mentality. It's like, I want to see what I can do. I want to see how fast, how far I can take this thing. So yeah, like I could watch Netflix till next Monday. I wouldn't die. I mean, it'd be fine, but that wouldn't excite me or energize me. And I feel like that's what life's about.
It was very surreal walking in here, and upon entering, on the right, hung on the wall, is your congratulations from YouTube for having 100,000 subscribers. So congratulations.
Yes,
That's dope.
congratulations.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to formulate this for the listeners, right? You and I are we've done 63, this will be 60,
This will be
whatever.
63, yeah.
However many.
Yeah.
I lose track.
Yeah.
Something like that.
We're in the low 60s.
Right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, we're at the base of the mountain. We're just getting started,
Yep.
right? Do you ever look back on where you were, like where we are? Do you ever look back when you had 10,000 subscribers and think to yourself like, wow, what if I quit? Like, what if I quit when that video didn't do well? Or what kind of perspective are you able to gain from your success?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that comes to mind, like I think in terms of epiphany or growth, is that the numbers are the wrong thing to look at. And that's because they become a benchmark, right? And as entrepreneurs, as people growing, like you want that benchmark. You need to ensure that you're adding value and that your value is reaching more people. But it can get in the way of doing what's right. Like sometimes what's right for you, what's best, and what you love and what the world needs takes a little bit more time to build that foundation, right? Like we talked about a little bit the idea of, like, if you wanted to put out a video right now that would get the most amount of views, what would it be? And I could tell you exactly what I could put out, in terms of the message and how I market it and the picture and the thumbnail. But like, that's not what I love to do. Like I to your point, like the rabbit hole thing, like I like to sort of, and I want to, and that's my vision, is like molding the poetic side into things, the musical side into things. And that might take a little bit more time to build and establish, especially in terms of honing my craft. So that's sort of the mentality I look at it. The numbers can be a distraction. And I feel like, especially with this podcast, like you guys are very good at looking at the long-term game. You're not looking at right now, which is the difference between, in my experience, someone that succeeds and someone that doesn't. Like being able to see, I can go through a little bit of shit right now. I can suffer right now because, like, I know what's coming.
Yeah.
And most people can't see it, which is part of the issue, right? People don't walk up to you, Alan, Kevin, like, I think it's fantastic what you think you're going to be in 5 years. Like, that doesn't happen.
Right.
You know it's there, and it's
exactly,
why, why you're pushing towards that.
Interesting. And it's also, I find this a lot too when you're around a lot of people who don't see that vision. And by the way, it's your vision. So how could they?
Right.
Because it's predicated on you being you.
Right.
But so they don't understand why you're doing what you're doing today, because what I'm doing today is predicated on this vision that no one else sees. So I look crazy to some people. How do you deal with that? Because you're looking at, okay, this is where I am, this is where my channel is now. You're following likes you the way you are now.
Right.
And we talked about how you have to give up to go up.
Right.
And that's kind of what you're talking about doing this rabbit hole video, this new trend. You're following likes these certain videos.
Right.
And they probably will love what you do next, but they're not used to it yet. And so there's this sort of crossing the chasm aspect here. So you have this vision of what you want your channel to be this decade, and you have what it is now.
Right.
How do you balance those two in terms of pleasing the current audience and pleasing might not be the right word, adding value to the current audience and still becoming who you want to become and what you want the channel to really be?
Absolutely. I think it's some awareness. I certainly, not a night and day switch. Like I still, write in the same way that I have. And I love doing that. I'm not going to stop doing that.
Your bread and butter.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I really enjoy that. So but it's pivoting and it's looking at the feedback. And, at the end of the day, if you're sharing with an audience and and the intent is to help the audience, their feedback matters. If I was putting something out that people didn't like, I'd reassess it. But there's also people are hesitant. Like we have trouble with change too, so you got to expect that. You got to expect pushback. I think it's just taking everything in perspective and not being scared to grow, and sharing my journey with the viewers. Are going through their own journey too. So it's almost like we're in this thing together, which I think is what it makes it so fun for me. And so if I go down a certain road, I can share that and I can talk about the wins and the losses and the pros and the cons. And it's just, it takes the pressure off because it's fun. It's like, this is my creative process. You have yours. Let's do this. I'm not going to be scared to share it. I don't give a shit. You shouldn't either. Like, let's do it.
Were you ever afraid?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in the sense of looking at criticism versus opportunity, right? Peter Voogd has this, I was scrolling through Instagram and I came across one of his talks and he says, look, I'll be loved or I'll be hated, but I'll never be ignored. And I thought, my God, right? Because there's been so many times where we tend to live sort of in that space where it's like, this is good, and I know it won't get a lot of pushback. No, get pushback. Have people say, Eddie, this sucks, and have some say, I love it. Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? That's good. That's good stuff. So that's kind of the space.
Is that
where
a
you
new
all-
mindset, or did you always have that? Was that the tipping point for
I
you
think
when you
the
saw that
s-
post?
The seed was there, but part of growth is expanding on that.
Yeah.
Like becoming, one, trusting yourself, which is not something that, at least in my experience, you just do. Like, you learn. I've really had to prove to myself that, like, you're going to have your own back. You're going to be there. You're not going to let yourself fail. When things go left and they're not the way you want them to be, you'll pick up the pieces and you'll kind of, you figure it out and you'll move on. So it's been, it's all part of the growing process. And what stops people and what's been a barrier for me is, when that situation comes up is it's okay. It's all right. Do it. Go. Don't stop.
So we were talking about, you said earlier out on the balcony, and we talked a little bit about it here.
Yeah.
There's a reason rich people get richer, right? There's a reason they get rich in the first place, because they work to get rich. When they get rich, they don't just stop working. They keep doing what they're doing because usually it's part of a passion. And when you're at the point you're at, where you have 20-something million views on YouTube, it's your job, it's your discipline to get up and go travel and shoot videos. It's your job to spend hours writing. It's your job to spend hours shooting. It's your job to edit it. What motivates you at this point? Like, you, by all standards, when we roll up to your condo and we walked inside, and I'm like, yo, there's a waterfall in here.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
whoa, what?
Dude, it is a hell of a first
It's a
impression.
beautiful
Eddie.
place. It's
Yeah.
a beautiful place. And by all standards, you said it out there. We're sitting on this balcony overlooking, I'm not even going to try to guess what ocean it is because I'm not good at that. Atlantic, probably?
Yeah.
So we'll go with that. But, and you're saying, like, by most standards, that was beautiful. By most standards, people would kill for this. And you're like, but I'm kind of like over it. I kind of feel like I'm settling now, and I kind of want to like expand. What gives you that next level like drive?
It's like this fear of being stagnant. You know what I mean? I mean, it's nice. It's nice to be able to work out there and have a view when I'm writing or whatever, but it starts to feel comfortable. And that scares me more than anything. I don't want to be content with where I'm at. I don't want to put out a video or 2 videos a week for the rest of my life and that's it. Like, I just want to constantly grow and push my boundaries. And I think always being a little bit scared is good. I think it feeds you what you need. So
A little bit scared of comfort, or a little bit scared of what?
what's in front of you, like walking into to the unknown, not really knowing things are gonna work out.
Oh, so like if you have no fear in your life, you're not going to grow, type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So like if I packed, which I'm talking about doing, right? So say I end the lease here and I go travel and I go make videos on the road, whatever it ends up being.
Yep.
That's new and that's exciting and that'll push me to places that I know I wouldn't have gotten staying in one place. And that's enticing to me. That's you could argue that that's everything.
Yeah.
That need, that want to move on. And the other piece is loving it, right? You asked me what drives you. I think it's as simple as loving it. The growth is important. Don't get me wrong, but if you don't wake up excited to hone your craft just for the sake of loving
honing
it,
your craft, yeah.
there's something's missing there.
Interesting. So what are I'm always trying to figure out for the listeners, like, what are the indicators that you're living in your passion? So one of the things that I always say is you don't know you're in love with something because you always want to do it, but you're always glad you did.
Right.
For you, what is your barometer of like, this is what, so for example, when you transitioned from the old bread and butter, and you're doing both, of course, but like to this new style, what are the indicators of like, hell yeah, this is what I should be doing?
That's a good question. So Ryan Holiday talks about purpose versus passion. Like, I talk about passion a lot in my work, and he says, look, passion's great. It's an adrenaline rush. Purpose is what sort of gets you through the BS, and sustaining it, because there's going to be periods where it sucks, right? And you have to move forward anyway. And if it's just a quick, oh, this is fantastic, and then things get bad and you don't have that long-term vision, then you sort of fall off. So for me, I agree with that to an extent, but one of the things that was an indicator to me is like putting out Rabbit Hole or Too Far Away, some of these different type of videos. I'm just so excited.
Yeah.
I'm so, like, none of it feels like
Mundane.
a job. So like some of these speeches that I've written, I really enjoy it, but it's like, all right, let's make something new. Let's write a speech. Let's take my experience. And it feels disciplined, whereas I feel like a little kid writing some of the other stuff.
Okay.
And to me, that was like, this is good. This is energy that is pushing you somewhere.
So we were talking again on the balcony, and I write, for those who listen, I write and do a little rap, and we were talking about like the motivation that comes from. Like, I get a lot of shit. I get a lot of pain in here that I write from. I dig deep into that. I had 140 notes on Facebook from when I think it was like 2010. This was a long time ago. And I had wrote some dark shit, like suicide stuff, like next level shit. But people don't I don't think people can grasp the pain. Like, Rabbit Hole, what does that mean to you? Like, how did you pull that out of yourself to use those metaphors?
Yeah.
Where did you get that from? Was that life experience? Was that...
I think it was. I mean, it's using experience to tell a captivating story. The idea of, I even talk about in the video, kind of sitting down, thinking about this is okay, but what do we do here? And the decision to just go for it and walking out. And Alice in Wonderland's in the back of my head the whole time. Like, that sort of theme of just delving into this new world. And so there's been a lot of times where I've done that in my life, where I've had to do that. It's like, take the risk, jump. And it's never killed me. And there's been times where I've been embarrassed and I've said dumb shit and things haven't worked out exactly the way I want, but at the end of the day, it's only made me better. And so it's taking that idea of jumping into the rabbit hole and facing the Queen of Hearts and jumping into that war that's going on around you and just living it and realize, because it's the fear of it that sucks. Anyone can get through that process. That's what I've learned. We're pretty adaptable creatures. We just have to, go for it.
I actually wrote a quote on my Instagram not long ago that if there's anything the last 6 million years of evolution has taught us, it's that human beings will adapt to any arena they're in.
Amen.
Make sure you're in the right arenas with the right people. That's huge. I'm so glad you just said that.
Yeah.
So,
and with the right people is key too.
Yeah, man.
100%.
Absolutely. And again, it's funny because you mentioned being guided, and then you you agreed on camera. For those of you, he was shaking his head up and down.
They call it nodding.
Nodding. That's the verbiage.
Agreeing.
You call yourself a speecher. I also feel guided. And you said it's not necessarily spiritual, and I like that you said that, not because it isn't for me, but because I believe the subconscious mind to be one of the most powerful things in the universe. So when you plug in a certain destination into your GPS, we already talked about earlier on this podcast how that's going to dictate the journey. It's going to dictate where you go and don't go, where you travel and don't go, what fears you face and don't face, what skills you create and don't create. And so you want to plug your GPS in, your mission, your destination, to make sure that you're living around people you love, doing the things that you love, and it's going to force you to embark on a journey surrounded by your passions.
Definitely.
So for you obviously feel guided on some level, and to be honest, I believe, from all the quantum and Newtonian physics that I've studied, that once you choose a specific destination, now you're going to feel guided because your subconscious mind is going to pick up on everything in your environment to do. Like, Kevin, you mentioned oh, yeah, that I have to go do. Oh, now I have to go do. Because on some level that's not conscious that will bring you closer to your end game goal. Is that how you feel in your life? And can you provide some examples of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think clarity is huge. And having that, knowing where the end game is really important. Sort of maintaining that vision is the challenge, in my opinion, because, you can have your destination, but there's a million ways to get there. And as people sort of making that journey, you're never really sure which way is right. And so to me, that's the thing. It's navigating and just sort of being methodical but exploring, right? The whole "not all who wander are lost" quote, and just kind of believing in the destination, trusting the destination, trusting you'll get there, and letting yourself feel it out.
So we were talking, I think you might be one of, if not the most humble people I've ever met, and had the
Appreciate that.
yeah, absolutely. I had the pleasure of being around. What keeps you grounded? Like, you know what I mean? What is it that, like, you're still Eddie Pinero from Boston?
Yeah, I agree with him 100%, by the way. Yeah, that's a great question.
I would not, if I walked in here and that YouTube thing wasn't up there, I would just be like, oh, okay, cool. He's like a musician. I would never know. Like, you said that you had an Uber driver who was giving you social media advice, and you just like sat back and were like, oh, whatever. Like, I'll just let it happen.
Little does he
Where a
know,
lot of people would be
you
like, excuse me, do you know who I am?
Yeah.
But not you, but a lot of people would.
Yeah.
Have you always been super humble? And I have always attributed my humbleness to the fact that I never felt good enough. For the first time in my life, I finally feel good enough. I finally feel enough with myself.
Amen
For a
to
long
that.
time, I didn't. And Alan is the antithesis, as he would say, to that. You've always felt like enough.
Yeah.
Huh?
No, but in terms of self-belief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Just poking fun. Poking fun.
so you know that.
There's the right way, and then there's Alan.
Well, we know Alan tends to stray off the path a little bit from time to time.
Gaston.
Oh, man.
But you know what you have to do to stay humble.
Yes.
You have to be tested repeatedly.
Yeah.
So
Challenged.
for me, I have to prove myself constantly.
Absolutely.
What side of that are you on? Or are you in the middle somewhere?
I would say more your side for sure. I think I've always felt like, one, there's something to learn.
Shut up.
There's something to learn from everybody. But
We had a moment there. I'm sorry.
perfect. That was
Keep
perfect.
going. That was perfect.
The loudest guy, the asshole in the room, is usually the one that adds the least value, in my opinion, right? And so it's like a don't tell people, show people.
You got to go to the bathroom?
I'm so sorry. Did you say Gaston?
No.
Okay. Yes, that's what you were thinking. He's
That
cracking me up.
is 100% my metaphor.
All
right
right,
there.
all right, you're the fucking man. I'm gonna be right back for the listeners. I need a minute. You keep going on that train of thought, though.
See you later.
Dude, I don't even know what we were talking about.
So Alan he has to be tested to stay humble. I have to prove myself to be humble.
Right.
What side are you on and why?
Yes, the confidence is earned side. I've always felt like, that's what I was saying. There's something to like learn from everyone and sort of, in other words, I'd much rather show someone than tell them. I feel like that's more powerful. That's more impactful. And it's sort of the way So you mentioned the guy in the car, and I did. I mean, he said things that that he brought up that I didn't know, and if I stopped them, I wouldn't have. I don't know. I guess it's just more powerful to me to lead by example, to show, to inspire, than to stand up and say, "Look at me."
It's such a fine line between. We were saying again on the balcony. We had a really good preamble on the balcony.
Yeah, that was good.
We went really deep. There's a fine line between arrogance and confidence.
Yes.
And it's like somebody like Alan who wants to master his craft, right?
Yeah.
Or you want to master your craft. It's a fine line when somebody like number one, how do you know who to listen to?
Right.
And number two, you really have to be. I just keep going back to humble and grateful because. When after the first episode, you sent us a giant text message because we said any YouTube tips you got, send them over.
Right.
And you sent us this giant thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, first of all, yeah, it's a lot of feedback, but we're learning from somebody who is exponentially further ahead than we are. So appreciate that so much. But for us, it's easy to look at that and be like, we're just going to do that. But I feel like some people don't get rid of their ego. They want to do it themselves. They want to be the reason it succeeds. They want to be the genius behind it. And I feel like we've learned more from the guests than we have almost from anything else.
Yeah.
So
how do you how do you keep that line between confidence and arrogance? We were talking about that outside.
Yeah, well, I think ego gets in the way of productivity for sure. Anytime I've made a wrong decision, I guarantee you, ego has, at least something to do with it. But in terms of the fine line, and I think it is very fine because you need to be confident. Again, that confidence is earned. It's proving it to yourself. It's not. It's manufactured over time. It's not fabricated into thin air. But I'd rather be confident and a tiny bit arrogant than, weak and
Timid.
Yeah. That's how I look at that.
It makes sense because on one side of it, you're looking for other people's forgiveness. If you're like a little bit too arrogant, then you're expecting some pushback from people.
Right.
But in my opinion, if I'm too timid, I'm gonna regret that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not gonna do this.
Right.
I'm not gonna walk into your apartment and be like, "Yo, let's hammer this podcast."
Right.
I'm gonna be afraid.
Another thing is just be a good fucking person too. I mean, and when you look at a lot of the people that, at least in my experience, that I've had a chance to network with, that have done big things, that have built big companies or whatever, they're just nice people. You're able to communicate. You're able to build circles that support one another. You give more, so you get more. Like, you gain nothing from being an asshole. That's
gonna be a teaser clip right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gain nothing from being an asshole.
It's
I like
true. What goes around comes around, and I really believe that.
that. You gain nothing from being unkind to people. That's huge. So on the balcony, we were talking about, and we had a little laugh about this earlier before I went to the bathroom, but for you, Kevin, you struggle a bit with self-belief. For you to maintain that self-belief, you have to do what Eddie just described, which is you manufacture it over time. You don't just fabricate it out of thin air. So for you, putting in the reps consistently keeps you believing in yourself, keeps you confident.
Yep.
For me, I'm a serial optimist where I always think things are going to go better than they do typically, which gets me in the arena. But then I get consistently humbled, especially when it's something that challenges me. So in both cases, if you're a listener out there right now and you consider yourself a pessimist or a realist or an optimist, figure out where you are on that spectrum. Either way, putting in the reps is going to either build your confidence or it's going to build your humility. In both cases, it's a good thing, and progress is what's going to keep you balanced.
At the end of the day, reps, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
How long did it take you to realize, like, failures don't really matter in the grand? So, for a little bit of perspective, I'm dealing with some sort of allergy mixed with asthma, mixed with anxiety, mixed with being overwhelmed. I'm dealing with all this stuff, and I've had a couple panic attacks in the last couple days. I had one in the hotel the other night.
Scary.
And in that moment, I don't have health insurance. So in that moment, I told Alan, I was like, dude, I don't care if it costs me $3,000 and I have to go to the emergency room. In that moment, that's what mattered to me. I forgot where I was going to go with this. What was I saying?
You were asking,
I'm all hopped up
how
on
do you
cough
know?
medicine.
How do you realize that failures ultimately don't matter? Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'm all hopped up. So in that moment, I've been stressing about money for a while because, this is my job. This is our job. This is my main source of income. But in that moment, when I had that perspective of, I feel like I'm about to die, what's $3,000? So I think that I would look at that, if I went out and spent $500 at the bar, I would look at that as a negative thing. But I would consider me having to go to the hospital a little bit of a failure in the long run because it would cost me a lot of money. I think that we always say fail forward. We always say fail forward.
Always. Yep.
But at the beginning, I didn't really believe that. I felt like failing. I'm trying to. What feels like the end of the world in the moment truly isn't. It usually isn't even close.
Right. Interesting, yeah.
So, and I feel like now I have this skill where I'm able to separate myself from reality and be like, no, this doesn't matter. This isn't a big deal.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. I always say, we're on a rock. Alan knows this. We're on a rock spinning around the fucking sun. This is a miracle. This whole thing is a fucking miracle. Like Gary Vee said, the odds of being born are 1 in 300 trillion. 300 trillion! So the fact that you got made fun of at school doesn't matter, really, in the grand scheme, if you're able to separate yourself from reality. So how do you separate yourself from maybe the hate that I won't say hate, but the negative feedback you get from the videos that you released that you thought were going to be amazing and they just didn't reside with people.
Yeah.
How do you learn and teach others that, guys, like failing is not the end of the world? It's actually, and I ask people this a lot because I think everybody has a different perspective on this, but how do you get comfortable in failure, in chaos?
I mean, it's $1 million question. I think it's something you can't read in a book. I really do. I feel like you have to prove it to yourself. You have to fail a little bit.
Yeah.
Which means you have to give something up. For me, I think we touched upon this a little bit last time we talked, but it was a pivotal moment in my life was spending 2 months on this album that looking like I listen to it now and I'm like, oh, yeah. Right. But like, time and energy and getting a cover made and sending it to bars in Boston and in the radio stations over there, like sending and not hearing back from a single person. And I'm like, at first you do like the thing that, you internalize it and you're like, well, Boston doesn't have any good, a bunch of hipsters. They don't know what good music is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then you realize like, no, this is, first of all, you didn't die and it's a good thing. And now you realize, I guess what it helped me do is depersonalize it. It's like, this isn't the world giving me the finger. This is just a lesson that in order to do big things, you need the shitty first album to step on, to make new things, to create new music, to create new art, to pivot, to grow, to become who you need to become. If I didn't put that out, that wouldn't have happened. And so when you look at failure, not as like, oh God, like hopefully this doesn't, no, it will happen. It should happen. It better happen. And it makes you who you are. And I mean, that's a roundabout way of saying like you just have to sort of immerse yourself in it.
So that's a good practical example of failure. We always say micro failures for macro success. So like at the end of a set at the gym, you want to get to failure each day. But a macro failure would be an example of like blowing out your knee and not being able to train for 3 months.
Right.
What's an example in your life where you had like a macro failure because maybe you stretched that rubber band too long and it snapped?
Yeah, well, I could say right now, using that exact, I haven't been able to run for about 2 or 3 months because my form was terrible, and I'd be running these, really long distances because I need to. I feel like it's sort of my, my quiet time, my time to sort of reassess life, and it hurt, and it was uncomfortable. I knew something was wrong, and I kept running, and I kept running, and I kept running, and now I'm in a position where I can't.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so I'm sort of picking up the pieces now. So in a way, that was, something that is affecting my life, and I'm trying to, put back together.
In hindsight, and I know you probably don't regret it because you wouldn't be here otherwise, but would you say that you struggled to read the obvious signs and adapt proactively? Now you're forced to adapt, type of thing.
Yeah, it's knowing in the back of my mind what I should do, and just thinking like I could sort of will myself through it.
Interesting. How do you know when to will yourself through something versus when to maybe pull back? Because that's like the $1 million question, man.
Well, it's the goal, right? What's the goal? If long term the goal is to be healthy, goal, and so there are other ways to achieve that. And if that's what's in my GPS, being healthy, then I change my behavior. And I reassess, and I get the physical therapy, and I get whatever I need so that I can go back out there. So my goal was pretty immediate. We talk about not looking at the big picture. It was like, I need this now. I'm going to do it now.
Interesting. And that kind of goes hand in hand with what you just said.
What do you do now, though? So you said running is your thing. It's where you get ideas. It's where you de-stress.
Right.
So for somebody out there who might either A, be going through an injury, B, be sick like me, I'm not going to the gym until I feel 100%. I've already made that distinction. That's it. It is what it is. How do you get in that creative energy now? Like, if that's your thing, what do you do now?
Find different ways. I mean, I cycle, I'm trying yoga, which has been helping me.
Nice.
And just long walks, like just walk down the beach, with headphones in, whatever. It's I guess when you spend a lot of time, and I spend a lot of time in here, it's my studio, the creative energy is really important, and it's tough to get that being in one place looking at this. Like, you need to
go explore.
Exert your body. You need to explore. You need, change of scenery and environment and interact with energetic people. And so it's really making that happen for myself.
When you are formulating a video or an idea, I always say, like, I tell Alan, like, I have lyrics come to me at night. Like, I'll be trying to lay down and things will just start rhyming in my head, boom, 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 and I got to write them down. There's been times where I've woken up in the middle of the night and had to write stuff down.
Yeah.
How do you form? You're an artist, right? You're an artist. So how does your art come together? Is it do you sit down and say from 7 to 8? Because we always say you can't innovate.
Right.
You cannot. One of my mentors said you cannot schedule innovation.
Right. So do you schedule it, or is it just come to you and you're like, this is it?
I've come across that exact thing, right? Because the discipline, the entrepreneur in us is like, we want to scale this.
Yeah.
We need to be like 9 to 11. You're writing. This is not how the world works. And so like I need to be inspired. And there's days where like, man, it's like the most productive day, and I have this like thing that I'm so proud of. And there's days where I sit in that chair and I'm just like, you just wasted it, And it's at the end of the day, it's not a waste, but it feels like it because you've exerted a lot and you have a goose egg to show for it. So I think part of it is putting yourself in situations where you can create that energy, create that knowledge, create the type of things that you want to write about, and that's sort of managing your life. And the other piece is, for me at least, writing it down, being proactive. Like when you find something that moves you, don't let it slip away. There's so many good thoughts that sort of come in one ear, out the other. I'm like, I'll remember that. Never remember.
Yep.
So writing it down.
You have a notebook on you all the time?
I use Evernote.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
nice.
just on my phone.
Very cool.
And then, sitting down and hoping the pieces come together, being patient, realizing that there's no one, tapping their feet behind you, waiting for it to happen. It's just let it happen.
Interesting.
Yeah. So a lot of pressure from sort of the old world of deadlines and timetables, and are moving that. And it's not throwing it all out the window, right? It's not being irresponsible and, all right, well, if I put something out in a month from now, that's fine. I mean, that's not fine, right? That's extreme.
Yeah.
But being easy on yourself and knowing that you're adding value to the world and do it your way.
Love it.
Yeah.
How do you know when it's a piece of content that's forced versus... So there's a book called Power versus Force that I talk about a lot on this podcast.
Yeah.
One of them is kind of love-based,
Yeah.
and one of them is fear-based. How do you know when you're creating something from inspiration, from that power base you have of creativity, versus like forcing content?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I don't know that I'd call it force. I know the exact... differentiator you're talking about. I don't know that it's forced content. When something really comes from the heart, it really resonates with me, I feel it. There are times, like when I'm playing something back and it's personal enough where it like moves me to tears, like really, really, really makes me feel like I know that I'm happy with it. Now, the difference is those aren't always, in YouTube, it's my space, right? We talk about numbers. We talk about growth. We talk about subscribers and likes and views. Those aren't always the videos that do the best, right? A lot of the time, it's not. It's a very simple message from something that I've experienced or whatever where I'm happy with it, but it's more of like a quick passing thing that I feel like people will benefit from. I don't feel like it's my life manifested into art.
Yeah.
And so it's hard because you wanna continue to add value and you want to do a little bit of both. You can't always strike gold every time. But that's why when you asked about the numbers, that can't be the driving force because that would totally mitigate, like it would change my reasoning for creating the stuff to begin with. That's, yeah.
Brendan Burchard put that quote up the other day that people want to be entertained
More than empowered.
more than empowered.
Yeah.
Do you find that, because I know you said, I could pick the perfect thumbnail, I could pick the perfect title, I could pick the perfect formulation, and it would hit. A lot of people would love it. But it's like, but would that change their life? That's kind of what you're saying. Like, I want it to be quality, not quantity.
Right.
Have you noticed that, and we've noticed it, I've noticed that people tend to, unfortunately, they tend to have an aversion to direct feedback.
Right.
When we're saying something like, if you're not happy at your job, get the fuck, get out. If you're not happy in your relationship, get out. Why are you in it? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Right.
I find that if it hits somebody, there's two ways. Either they get motivated and they say, fuck, that is me. Finally, okay, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And there's other people that are like, what do you know? Like,
Yeah.
you don't know what I'm
It's
going
easier to watch
through.
a sitcom.
Yeah.
Have you found that? And is there a way to Miyagi them, as we were talking about, to kind of convince them without actually convincing them?
Yeah. I think that's the key, right? It's taking the entertainment, it's taking the message and merging them. to me, that's one of the most important things. It's relatability too. You never want to feel like you're being lectured.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I've had a nice journey. I've done all right. I don't know everything, right? So all I can do is share what I've read, share my thoughts, share my experiences, and package it in a way that's putting it out there to the world. I'm not telling anyone to do anything. If you're in a situation similar to mine and it relates to you, please take it, put it in your pocket, and reuse it. I find like as entrepreneurs, we have more in common than we don't. Like there are the same high-level issues we all face. And sometimes it happens to me all the time. It's just some reassurance or hearing someone say, I dealt with this and I got past it. Sometimes you forget that to get the gumball, you need to put the quarter in the machine and turn it. I mean, it's
a great analogy.
Pretty simple.
Yeah,
right?
right.
It's like, the simplistic things are the things we forget.
Yeah, reminders.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll be like, or I'll spend 2 days on something. I'll be like, I hate this. I hate this. This is not what I want to be. Like, I start to get stressed. I'm like, I got to reassess my approach. And I'll get a message. Someone will be like, this video changed my life. And just that, like nothing changed with me or my process or what I'm doing, but it's like, it's important. Like, relax and share your thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's just the tiniest changes in perspective that make the world of a difference.
Hell yeah.
And that's your world within.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah.
Love it. So I actually told you earlier that, one, I love the playlists, and we talked about that a little bit, but how at the tail end of my workout, when I do hit that wall of not wanting to be there, I love the gym, and I'm passionate about it, and I want to be there for the first hour and 20. But after that, when I'm really trying to give it all, it becomes a fight. You hit that wall, when you're running.
Yep.
And that's when I put on your specific videos, is when I'm like, okay, I need this little extra, like, I don't want to fucking be here, but it's going to be worth it. That's when I put on your videos. So
that
that's
means
awesome,
the world
man.
to me, man. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Like, truly, that if that is the message that resonates with people, I feel like I'm doing something right. So.
And the thing is the gumball analogy. Like, I know I've listened to one of your videos, Ode to Excellence, literally over 1,000 times. Every single day for the last 2.5 to 3 years. So that's over 1,000.
It's amazing.
I still get amped every time. First of all, it's a trigger in the morning for me to get up and get after it. But that's the thing. I know everything in the video. I know the principles. I know them intellectually, but I need to be reminded of them. Repetition is everything. You don't go to the gym once and you're fit for life.
Right.
Like, same with your mindset.
Right.
You help people retrain their mindsets. I bet you. So you said that your demographic was like 80% males 18 to 36 or
On
something
YouTube,
like
yeah.
that on YouTube.
Yeah.
What percentage of that do you think are entrepreneurs, if you were to guess?
I would guess that it's pretty high.
Yeah.
Pretty high. Or runners, athletes, which again, the parallels there are extreme. They're so similar.
Yep.
In terms of that philosophy, getting to a finish line when you can't see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I agree. I mean, it's
Or
sort of
when you can see it in your mind, but not in.
exactly.
Yeah.
But making sure that you do see it in your mind. That I've running when you're hurting. And all you want to do is stop. That's when it becomes easy to sort of lose that vision, lose the finish line. It's not until you cross it, you're like, that's why I did this. This is awesome. But I think it is sort of training your mind. Like when I wake up, I fell into a brief period where habitually, my alarm clock is my phone. My phone's right next to me. And you pick it up, you scroll through Twitter, you open your email. And that's just the wrong way to start your day. And I don't even remember who the speaker was, but I came across this video where some guy's like, that's your most precious 15, 20 minutes. Like, why in the hell? Why would you waste a second doing that?
Yeah.
Right? And then so it's you get up and you hear a positive message and you put yourself in a position to one, understand the opportunity, be grateful, and look to take on the day in the right way. That's stuff like that. It's positioning yourself to see the good, the possibility in the day.
So I have 2 questions.
Hit me.
First, what is your morning ritual?
Okay.
And then the second one has nothing to do with the first. So I'll let you answer the first.
Okay, perfect. So I get up, and now this has been, like I said, newly implemented, but like I'll go on YouTube and I'll find some motivation. I'll find a Tony Robbins speech. Or even if it's music, sometimes it's taking some songs out onto the balcony, just kind of decompressing, and getting ready to start the day, learning to really appreciate it. I've had to change things around because normally it was running shoes when you hit the beach or whatever.
I can tell that's been tough on you, man.
Yeah,
That
it's-
transition,
yeah,
I can
it's
see it all over you,
Mm.
brother.
100%,
Yeah,
100%.
So, amen.
But some type of physical activity.
Yep.
And then usually from there, like if there's an important thing I have to do, whether it's like, an administrative, like I usually get emails out of the way after I've worked out and had breakfast, and then kind of just as the day unfolds, jump into the writing and whatever it is, with a break at some point in between.
My next question. This is a deeper question.
Okay.
I like to go deep. So I joke with people a lot. Like if I'm not crying once a week, I'm not doing it right because I get overwhelmed. I get all of these things.
Yeah.
Do you ever get lonely? Like, do you ever get lonely? Not from like I need somebody, but like, does anybody even really understand like what I'm going through? I'm lucky where I work with Alan, and I live with Matt. Matt's trying to do next level things. Alan's trying to do next level things.
Right.
So I'm kind of only surrounded by people who are trying to do next level things, but I get lonely still. Like I see myself just, I'm overwhelmed, and it's just like that lonely feeling of like, oh goodness, it's going to be so hard to settle down with somebody who understands what I'm feeling.
Right.
Like who knows the level of overwhelm that I'm at right now. Like I am the most overwhelmed I've ever been in my entire life, hands down. Do you ever get that feeling of like, how am I going to find somebody who's congruent with these thoughts, with these feelings, with this, not necessarily the mission, but the understanding of what goes into it?
100%. Yeah. Because one, I've left a lot and gave up a lot to be here, in terms of, incredible people that were in my life that like to some extent they're not anymore. And that's because you can't go down two tracks. Like if you want to do something with all of your heart, if you want to jump into something, you need to do it. You can't, tiptoe this line. It's like you're in or you're not, and that's something that, I've definitely dealt with 100%. And so the key is surrounding yourself with, to your point, like people that understand, that you can chat about, that you can sort of, help each other, reinforce each other. Because that's what it's about. I mean, the biggest thing is the uncertainty, right? The peaks and the valleys. And I always say the peaks are incredible, but the valleys are very low.
Yeah.
And so it's having that conversation, like, remember, it's par for the course, baby.
Yeah, par for the course. I
know?
use that all the time.
I see you
Must
feeling
be a Boston thing.
Boston strong. I see you feeling
Yeah, big time.
over there.
We talked on the balcony. You just mentioned giving up to go up. You can't, do two different tracks simultaneously because you're either kind of all in or out.
Right.
In this kind of journey. So you went to Holy Cross.
Yep.
I went to WPI in Worcester. College was amazing, and I know that you enjoyed college as well with
Absolutely.
rowing and crew and all of that.
Beating up WPI, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, either way, that's fine. I was just an engineer, so it's all good. Just an engineer. No, engineering was awesome, but I wasn't into the sports or anything like that. So I was big into the booze.
Okay.
But anyways, you probably had a lot of strong relationships from college,
Yes.
and people that are on an extremely different track, as you said.
Yep.
It's tough for them to understand you,
Right.
probably. Have you found that you've, found it difficult to relate to people? Because, again, just to explain this to the listeners, like all of us have certain core values that are, again, dictated by the destination that we choose, that we plug in, by our purpose, our passions, and like the track that we're on. Sometimes you don't share a lot of core values with people who are on a completely different track. Neither track is right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, okay, I'm on this path. This is where I know I need to be and should be and want to be.
Right.
I no longer relate. We don't have a lot to relate about anymore. Do you find that that's really challenging to stay connected to your old college friends?
I do. Not anymore, but I think part of it was like ego starting out. I mean, I've been fortunate. I feel like a lot of my friends are really sharp folks, and they're doing great things, and it didn't take them long out of school to do that, right? And so
Nice.
for me to take a second and be like, well, I'm going to strip everything down and start from the bottom. Like, that was humbling. It's humbling to walk into a bar with one of your buddies working at Goldman Sachs. One of them's working for a senator, and you're like, well, I have this YouTube idea. What's up?
Yeah. yeah.
So it's
Oh, man.
it's that part, but it's all ego. It's all ego, right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so once you learn to get past that, it helped. Like no one, I'm doing this for me and the value that I feel like I can give back to the world. Who cares what anyone says?
Do you think that they were supportive of you even out of the gate, or do you think there was that sense of like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like, what are you about?
Yeah, I think the support primarily came from my family, which was incredible. I think in a lot of ways you sort of look at the situation and it makes you rethink a lot of things, like what's important, whose values are you really measuring, and are you giving
Value to.
value to? Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And why?
Yeah.
And does it matter? And it's one of those things again where like you can't. Again, I love all these folks, but like you got to replace your value where it matters, right? And it's just kind of stepping into the unknown and going for it, and having my parents' support, even because it was a scary thing, for someone that I'd been very straight-laced. Like I went to high school, did well, went to college, did well, got a job at like a leadership program. It was fine. It didn't really flourish there, but it was fine. I enjoyed it to an extent, but all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that anymore. And the people that love you are the ones that are like, what? No, don't do that. But even then, even not knowing, they had my back. So that like meant a lot.
They did.
Yes.
Do you find now that like it's easier probably because a lot of their doubts are now kind of not there anymore because you have succeeded to probably an extent more than they thought you would?
I think it's simply the idea, like we talked about a few minutes ago. It's like showing, not telling. Anyone can stand on anywhere and say, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. It's no. Don't shut your mouth and build, right? And now I feel like I'm at a point where like, hopefully people believe that I'll do, add value to the world because I have, and I want to continue doing that, and that's sort of how I identify myself.
So if someone's in that position right now, like you were, where it's like you're around a bunch of people who are succeeding based on, society's standards, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's one track, but they want to go and do their passion. What do you tell them to help them make that leap, like that you wish you would have fucking known, man?
Absolutely. So, a few things. So, like, you have to make I guess if I could go back, it was sort of abrupt. I let the pot boil to the point where I'm like, forget it. Whatever happens, happens, right? And it worked out because I told myself that I wouldn't let myself fail. I knew I wouldn't let myself fail. And I was like, put your back against the wall, see what happens. Right now, logistically, there are things I would have done differently. If you're talking to someone that's in a 9-to-5, don't give your boss the finger and the next day hope that things are going to work. Like, position yourself for success. That's important. You got to be pragmatic in the approach.
Yep.
And like, if there's a way to maybe to some extent build a foundation to land on before you leave, that.
When you say foundation, do you mean in terms of personal development and mindset, or do you mean like a financial, or all of the above? Both. Okay.
Understand like what it's going to mean, because the grass is always greener, right? I always joke around like when I left the corporate world and went into this sort of creative side of things, it was fantastic for a month, and then it was just some dude in his mid-20s sitting alone in a bar, like feeling sorry, or alone, not in a bar, in my apartment, feeling sorry for myself.
Yeah.
Got the bar thing stuck in my head. And so that's when the temptation was like, just go back. Like, at least you had a paycheck. At least you knew what to expect. And so that's anyone leaving, if you think it's going to be a cakewalk, it's not. 100%, no matter what it is, it's not. It's going to suck. And you just have to learn, like, if you're okay with that, great. Some people aren't. Like you were talking about earlier, people that have different values. One of my best friends, he has a good job. He's got a family. He's got a beautiful home. And, like, that's his pinnacle. That's his life. And that excites him every day. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
But know what it is that you want.
Yeah, know yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if that doesn't excite you when you end up there, then you're screwed.
Right. Did you do a lot of... So I had one of our listeners, Amy. Shout out to Amy. We love you.
Amy.
When she wanted to go... Hi, Amy says. Look at that.
Next level client, man. She's killing it.
She is.
She's killing it.
She is like the hyper-conscious prototype.
Yeah.
Like she does... She reached out when she was having issues, and she just started fear chasing.
Yep.
And she just does it. She just does it.
Yeah, she's
That's
next
awesome.
level.
It's insane. I'm super proud of you, Amy. When
gonna love that.
Yeah, she's gonna love that. We love her, so that's good. She reached out to me, and she wanted to know about going back to school, and she said, "I want to go, but I don't know if I'll be able to do it with work." And I said, "Okay, have you put yourself in that position? Like, imagine what that would be like. Are you willing to wake up at 6, go to the gym, then go to work, and then go to school? Or are you capable of handling all that?
Right.
So I always say, if Alan says, hey, do you want to go climb a mountain? I'm going to ask what mountain it is. I'm not going to agree to it because it could be Mount Wachusett in
barely a
Massachusetts,
mountain.
or it could be
Everest.
Mount Everest.
Yeah.
You have to know what to expect in order in order to figure out what to pack. Right. Did you do research on how do I get on YouTube? How do I become successful? How do I grow my YouTube? All this equipment. Like how was that process of you getting out of corporate America into this?
Yeah, so that's that's one of the things where it's like maybe logistically I could have been smoother. I literally just night and day just jumped. And so at that point in my life, it was an acoustic guitar playing shows around Boston, and I was blogging and I was doing some a little bit of creative writing, but it was mostly songwriting. And I was playing music, I was writing that album, and just kind of going for it. And so in the process, kind of simultaneously learning how to use Final Cut, how to use Pro Tools to record music, how to use a DSLR. All these things that we all have to
Yeah,
use.
man.
Yeah, we're still waiting to learn that one.
Yeah. Maybe we'll take a course on from you, Eddie, after this.
Yeah, happy to help. So it was a lot at once. But it was just kind of self-taught, just kind of letting the thing unfold and making those adjustments.
Do you ever think if you researched more into music that you would have maybe you would have struck it big in music instead of, because now you're at the point now where you have a platform where pretty soon you're just going to be able to do whatever you want as well as these videos. If you want to release an EP, I'm sure a percentage of your fans will listen to it, right? Because they're fans of you.
EP
I don't
for
know.
us that don't-
Extended play. It's like a little CD.
Word.
I just heard of it. I don't know what it is. Don't ask me.
Yeah.
But so that's what we say. You need money to make money. When you have a lot of money, it's easier to make more money.
Right.
When you have a lot of followers and fans,
Right.
it's easier to do the things you want because there's most likely people are going to resonate with it.
Right.
So do you think if you did research, better research, more research, took the time, maybe got around people who are making music, got around people who motivated you, do you think things would turn out differently? And I'm not saying this because we want to live in the past, but just for the listeners, maybe if you prepare yourself better, the journey will be a little bit easier. It's still going to suck. You're still going to have sleepless nights. But if you know what you're getting yourself into, you'll know what tools to bring with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of me is happy because if I knew the difficulty, I probably wouldn't have. I'd probably still be in a cube. But yeah, I mean, it was a learning process. And so I always feel like the music thing is built into what I do because, starting out, I was creating the background music, and that was a piece of it. It was a creative piece. The words were a creative piece. But I was doing two things at once and ultimately made a decision where it's I can take pieces of what I love, put them here, and build a brand and a company and a platform that will be able to grow and more, it's more unique, it's more niche, and it's more. I just felt like I could have a big impact quickly. And to your point, once that's built up, then you sort of go again. You can evolve and evolve and evolve. I remember trying to explain to my family when I first left, what I was trying to do. And I drew 3 lines, and I drew, Your World Within, and I drew music, and I drew a clothing line, which I haven't really done anything with, but that was sort of my vision. And I'm at one point, if it's done correctly, all 3 of these things intersect. And it's just, it's being patient and understanding that, again, not tomorrow, but someday, when you have a platform that's talking about creativity, that's directed towards creative folks, entrepreneurial spirits, then it's completely aligned to move into music, which is, by the way, exactly what I'm doing.
Right.
Little by little, right?
Yeah.
And just seeing those stars align. So
Is the clothing thing in the future?
I think so. I've literally given it no thought. I've been so preoccupied with now the other 2.
Yeah.
But I'd love to come back to it at some point.
I always say this, and the listeners will probably recognize this. I call it the genie in the lamp. If you could rub a lamp and a genie could pop out and you could be the best in the world, ode to excellence at any 3 things, what would you choose? For me, it's fitness, professional speaking, which also includes podcasting, and then social media marketing. Those are the 3 things that I want to be world class at.
Yeah.
When I listen to Ode to Excellence, your video, that's what I'm thinking of when you say that it'll all be worth it in the end. And there's a Tom Brady in the background, by the way, which is yes. Which, by the way, Eddie has
he's
a
repping
TV
it.
12 T-shirt on right now, which is epic because we're in Florida and we just lost to the Jaguars, unfortunately.
Yeah. Shout out to Papa Pinero for sending it down.
Hey, Papa.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Papa Pinero.
Yeah.
But to get back to my question is, you have all three of these things that you knew would integrate at some point.
Yeah.
You're eventually, that was kind of part of the GPS, sort of. So you had a vision, but it's like more than, you had sort of a, you mentioned the tracks, train tracks. You knew that these would intersect at some point, so that was always part of the destination from out of the gate?
Yes. I knew like creatively where I wanted to take them. I've always had trouble with, where do you want to be in 10 years? Because it's like I couldn't really define it. Like I feel it and I understand it, but it's very hard for me to articulate.
Okay.
I feel like it's a platform or a foundation where I have creative freedom, where I'm having an impact, in some way of communicating that to the world.
Wow. So that, we always talk about thoughts become things. You had that vision come to you, and at one point this was just you explaining 3 lines on a piece of paper to your family, and now you're literally living that. Now you have creative freedom.
Yep.
So you're living your dream.
Right. So if we were talking about this the other day, if somebody asked me where I want to be in 10 years, exponentially bigger, but doing the same things I'm doing now. I want to be the best podcaster. I want to have at least one either boxing or Muay Thai fight under my belt, and I'd like to put together a CD of raps. Like that's what is happiness? Happiness is where I am now, but my future looks like this it's in the same box, but the box is brighter. Right. I'm up a level or whatever it is. That's why we were talking about that the other day. It's like,
yeah, man.
I am happy. I am fulfilled. I am joyous. I have the things that I want. And I just want another level of these.
Yeah, I want to amplify this geometrically to do more and at a better level.
Yeah, more of what I love.
The frequency and magnitude at which I already do.
And that's
will
kind
increase.
of like, that's exactly what you're doing.
Right. That's perfectly said. And my issue is, I wouldn't say it's an issue. The challenge I run into is when people ask the question, and you would know this, right? A lot of performance experts talk about measurable improvements. I question the metrics. Like I question saying 1 million subscribers because my goal for so long was 100,000. And then you get there and it's like, I don't care. Like it's the exact same thing.
But it's the journey. Okay, keep going. Sorry. Yeah.
No, but that's 100% it. It's the journey, and how I'm measuring that is something that I'm still trying to figure out. Yeah, it's I don't know how to measure that growth.
That is, so right now we're in a moment where none of us really know the answer to this.
Right. I appreciate the fact that you just kind of said like, I don't know everything.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people would.
I haven't figured this out yet either. Like, what is the do look at the numbers, don't look at the numbers, what like, if I don't step on the scale, I'm not going to know whether or not I'm building muscle or burning fat.
Well, exactly.
So it's like an objective measurement of views, but it's not about the fucking views. How do you, and none of us obviously know the answer.
You need it to an extent.
Yeah.
Like if you start losing or like you're not moving, you're staying stagnant, like something's wrong and you reassess.
Yeah.
But if your entire life is predicated on that 1 million subscriber mark, not only will you be, again, GPS, right? Not only will you be taking roads that aren't, you know how many times I've listened to like Lewis Howes talk about using webinars to make money or something like that. I'm like, oh shit, like I gotta,
but it's not in your heart.
Like I gotta cash in. Like, I should start. And then I'm like, this is not me. He's brilliant at this. This makes sense for Lewis Howes. This is not me.
By the way, that's how he started networking events with LinkedIn.
Right.
Yeah, so that's his bread and butter. But what if it's not
100%.
yours? Just
Right.
because it's like a path doesn't mean it's the path you want. Dude, I resonate so strongly with this. It's
It's
not even funny, man.
100%
Because
true.
I'm always like, but I don't really want like that. I don't feel pulled to that.
Right.
So how do we know the difference between push and pull and like when to push and when to pull? Because I'm pulled to most
Define
things.
push and pull.
So, so it's funny. I do push pull legs for my splits in the gym, but pull is like inspired. Push is like willpower. So, for example, Lewis Howes is saying do webinars, and you're like, I could force myself to do that, and it would produce more income, and maybe more impact, but I don't feel drawn to it.
Right.
Right. So, what's an example of a place where you push yourself to do something that you really don't want to fucking do, but it's the right thing to do, versus being just drawn to it? Like running, you were just drawn to. You didn't really have to force that much, right? Until you hit that wall. I'm that way with the gym. But I know there's things that I should be doing. We talked about this on the balcony for the listeners. Business versus art. and you're talking about how like you could be more proactive about your speaking and about your business and about maybe doing webinars or coaching or whatever you're trying to do, right? So, but yet you're not fully drawn to it, and you're trying to figure out whether or not this is in my heart versus not. So what's best financially and subscriber-wise may not be in your heart, and so how do you stay congruent, man?
Yeah, well, I think part of it's knowing what you love, what your strengths are, and finding ways to remedy that. Like, at some point, you have the luxury of sort of talking to people that can tip. No one's gonna tell me creatively, how to put out a message, but I can call people and ask them about the business. Like, you can learn the business side of things. To me, I guess a lot of people start from there. They start from the business side. How do you make money? And then they sort of move from there, where it's like, no, like, do what you're excited about. And when you're excited about it, you do it a lot. When you do it a lot, you're good at it. Anything you're good at, you can monetize. And so I've always felt like focusing on the craft first, an audience first. If you have a huge audience in a craft that people appreciate and they value and they come to, money's not going to be an issue. And you'll be doing something you love and they feel that, right? If you're doing something for money or forced or clicks, you're not going to be excited, and people are going to know, right? The first thing you can spot when you're listening to someone is a lack of authenticity.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's people on YouTube that right away you're like, this guy is selling.
So
me a
what
car.
is that barometer for you? What indicators do you have? I know mine, and I'll say it after, but what indicator do you have for a lack of authenticity? Like, how do you know?
Like listening to someone else or myself?
Someone else.
I think you can just tell. I mean, in our world, it's YouTube, and so it's people push. Like, you're almost waiting for the sale. It's like the value. Like, they don't. The priority is not the art. The priority is not adding value. The priority is making money. And I'm not knocking money. I mean, you need it. It's fun. It's a good thing, but you can tell right away when that's the driving force.
Do you think everyone can, or are you just honing in on that? Because
Everyone
you're an
can what?
artist. Sense that money's the priority. Like making a sale. We talk about this with Mariana, service versus selling.
Yeah.
Selling is when you're trying to, again, push a product on someone that they
Right.
don't necessarily need. And service is taking what you have of value and solving an actual problem they have.
Yes.
So, for example, if I'm not motivated at the tail end of my workout and I put on your video, that's like a service that you're providing to me. Versus if you were trying to say, yo, Alan, you need this. Like, this is for you. And I'm like, dude, I'm not even in the gym right now, bro. I'm at, something else.
You can feel that.
Yeah.
So it's like what we were talking about earlier. It's like someone saying, you are this, like, you're broke. You shouldn't be broke. There's ways to fix it. Buy my product. Get out of this mess. Or like, get jacked. Buy my shit.
Yeah.
Take it. It's like, that's different than hearing a story that moves someone, that makes you sit down and question some things you've done. And
Wow.
And I just feel like there's different ways to go about that, right?
You got to feel your way into it.
Yeah.
I think that's why we have people that reach out and say, like, I resonated so highly with you. It's because I'm pouring my heart out on this thing.
Yeah, man.
Like, I'm not here to make money.
Yeah.
I'm here to change lives.
Yeah.
And I know when I change enough lives, the money will come.
Yeah.
But to your point, this started off as a passion.
Yeah.
Right.
The
This started
craft
off-
first.
Yeah, this started off as a passion.
That's a huge thing you just hit
That
on.
is a
Some
huge
people
thing.
start with the money and then they hone the craft to make
Especially
money.
if that's your motivation. Like you said, like if making money is the motivation, you're going to run out of that motivation faster than you're going to run out of the passion.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
know?
Not only that, you're kind of just holding on and letting life take you wherever. Like,
Yeah.
you want to have more control over that,
Yeah.
you know?
Because if money's the goal, then you're going to be willing to do things you normally wouldn't to make the
100%,
money rather than the
100%.
craft being the goal. So what's best for you will not always be first
And that-
because money's first.
And that's a reoccurring thing, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, I want to add value, but I'm an entrepreneur. Like, I want to make money as well.
Oh, for sure.
But there's
Gotta
things
do
that,
it.
There's things that are like, every time I follow the money, every time it brings me somewhere where I'm like, this just isn't.
We talked about one event recently. Do you want to talk about that experience? Okay, we'll leave that out. Yeah.
I think we're running out of time. So
We are.
I want you to plug away all your channels, all your things, all your products.
You
all that good stuff.
Something about Gaston.
Do you want to go there? No.
Yeah.
That's going to be a no for me, dog.
Place,
Yeah. For next time. Yeah, that'll be the teaser clip for next time.
Yeah, so my clips, my videos, everything I put out's on YouTube. YouTube.com/yourworldwithin. Same thing with Instagram, your_world_within. And, everything will be there.
Love it.
How'd you get that name, by the way? Real quick. Yeah.
Running on the Cape Cod Canal. I just kind of popped into my head, I guess, thinking about the internal side of things, perspective, and how to look at the world a little differently.
When I came across your YouTube channel, I remember thinking, and Kevin can attest to this because the Hyperconscious podcast was something I honed in on. I was like, to me, that's awareness. Like bringing awareness to things. Your World Within was a name that I loved. I was like, immediately, like, I was honestly, no bullshit, jealous of that name. I was like, that's next level. So I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
Also, because we talked so much on this episode about the rabbit hole
Yes, I
video,
was gonna ask.
we should add that to the
Yeah.
podcast
that'd be
if you don't mind.
Yeah, I would love to, man.
That'd be fantastic.
Beautiful things.
All right, ladies and gents, this was a dope. I thoroughly enjoyed this whole experience. This is
is
fear
awesome.
chasing. This is kind of a dream come true because this was just an intention 6 months ago.
Yeah.
This is some next level shit. I want
Thank
to
you,
shake your
Eddie.
hand. I appreciate the hell
Always
out of you,
a
brother.
pleasure, guys.
Thank
Ladies
you
and
so much.
gents,
Coming down to Florida from
follow,
Jacksonville.
of course, man.
Always.
Follow this man. His videos are next level. I would not say that if I didn't listen to them. When I'm getting ready for a heavy leg set, I put on Down the Rabbit Hole. That's my jam. So, ladies and gents, Mr. Eddie Pinero of Your World Within. We hope you enjoyed.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for listening to another episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast.
Going hyper-conscious will absolutely change your life because if you understand why something is the way it is, now you have the power to change it. If you going hyper-conscious with us has changed your life in any way, please share this episode with one of your friends because the more people that go hyper-conscious, the better this world's going to be for everybody.
And if you would kindly leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, that would help us make more people hyperconscious, and we would be greatly appreciative.
Thank you.
Bye.